Good morning, friends. Ashley here. Welcome to the Daily Stoic Recovery Podcast on the 13th of February. Pleasures can turn into a punishment. Whenever you get an impression of some pleasure, as with any impression, guard yourself from being carried away by it. Let it await your action. Give yourself a pause. After that, bring it to mind both times. First, when you have enjoyed the pleasure, and later when you will regret it and hate yourself. Then compare it to the joy and satisfaction you'd feel for abstaining altogether. However, if a seemingly appropriate time arises to act on it, don't be overcome by its comfort, pleasantness, and allure, but against all of this, how much better the consciousness of conquering it. EPICTETUS, ENCHIRIDIon 34. Today's subject is about pleasures, how pleasures can actually become punishment. So I'm going to talk to you about my gambling experience with this topic, with this excerpt, and how the journey of when you're putting a bet on. So for me, there's an event on, maybe a big snooker tournament, and there'd be a build up to it. For example, World Championship Snooker, and there'd be a build up to it a few days before, and you start to get feelings of, okay, who should I bet on? Who do I think will win? Who can I predict will win? What are the odds? How much could I win? And all these voices inside your head throughout the build-up, and analysing on the internet, and you read it on the news, doing all the research, and then you sit down and you put your bets on, and then you watch the tournaments, you watch the matches, hoping, praying, wanting your players to win, living every shot, miss, frame, match. And then the player you've bet on might win, might lose. And after the tournament's over, you get this feeling of guilt. As Epictetus says, you start to hate yourself, even if you've won or lost is really immaterial. The action of doing something that isn't aligned with your soul, you're always going to get that guilt. And that was what it was with gambling. I was doing it out of guilt. I knew it wasn't a healthy activity. I knew it was just trying to chase some story that I built in my head, that money meant freedom and happiness and joy. If I won the bets and I could brag about it and get the attention, and all these stories that if I won, maybe I could become an expert, maybe I could get the attention for being skilled and feel all this excitement, constantly. But when you're in that sort of previous to placing the bet, the analysing, the excitement building up to that bet, and watching the matches when you've got a bet on, and you know, getting excitement when your player is winning. You're not allowing for the fact how you will feel when it's all over. You know, the guilt and the shame and the lack and of doing that thing when you know in your soul it's destructive and it's time consuming and it takes you away from actually creating, takes your mental energy away from sort of creating something awesome. And yeah, it's the emotional attachment to it. You know, you're not aware that, you know, when you're doing it's analysing how much emotion, energy, and you're going to attach to it. As that became a habit for me. And there is many gamblers out there. This is a disclaimer that, you know, they very much take it or leave it. You know, it's not a one real one for all. Not everyone is addicted to gambling, and not everyone has this relationship. The relationship I had with it, and a lot of people out there just put the bets on. They watch the event. If they win, great. If not, they're not bothered. This is what they say. And yeah, when it's over, they just forget about it and carry on with their lives. And don't feel that emotion of guilt and shame and embarrassment. Well, not in the surface. Who knows what's going on inside? But that's only we know that. But that's how it seems. So it's not the gambling that is a problem. It's our self-control. It's our relationship to it. And this passage sort of gives me a perception that, you know, it's comparing how I feel. You know, the excitement I feel when I'm analysing the bets, when I'm watching the matches, when I've got a bet on, and the build up to it, the excitement, the perceived excitement I've got, that my ego was created, and the chemistry, this illusion that, you know, this external thing's going to make me happy and blah blah. So it's an illusion. So you're in your head. I'm in my head. So it's comparing that feeling, all this excitement, you know, going to the match, you know, put your scorecast on and, oh, you could win and your bet's getting closer to winning, and, you know, think how that's going to feel when you win all that money, and what could you do, how, you know, maybe you could do this, maybe you could do that with it. Doing, that is the phrase rather than being. You're in your head thinking all the things you can do with the money, because you can only do things with money. You can't be it. You know, money allows you to do things, to spend on things you don't need. You know, it allows you to spend money on food and devices and holidays and whatever it is you spend your money on. It's doing. It doesn't help you from being. Just being that feeling that those things give you. We're going on to another subject there, but back to this journey of, but it's all related, it's all linked. And yeah, so it's comparing that sort of feeling of what you feel, you know, excitement, but comparing that feeling to actually, as EPICTETUS says, conquering that addiction and not doing it. Comparing how you feel that excitement, comparing that to like not doing it, and the satisfaction you get with that you've conquered it and you haven't done it. You've listened to yourself. You've overcome the need to do it. So it's comparing those two. So which of those do you want to feel? Do you want to feel this excitement from doing the thing and thinking that this thing that you're watching, this thing that you play on, this casino, the money's going to make you happy, or do you actually want to feel the satisfaction of being in self-control, just not doing anything, knowing that you can bring all these feelings towards you anyway, without the betting, the gambling, whatever you call it, and the external reward. And so when you think about it like that, it's like for me it's like a no-brainer, like the satisfaction of overcoming it and not sort of being allured to it, and the satisfaction, because when you get this part, when you get this feeling of just not doing it, that becomes a habit, and becomes a very good habit, that you're not allured to these things. And if you've got problems with gambling, it can lead into other things in your life. You can learn to say no to people, things and places, and you might stop watching the news, you might stop overeating, you might stop watching Netflix, because you've got that, because you're having you've got this self-talk of comparing the two feelings of, doing the thing and the pleasure of doing that thing against the pleasure of not doing the thing, the pleasure of conquering it. And it's comparing the feeling, like, as well, the other two feelings of, how you feel when you feel guilty for doing it, and against the feeling of, like, doing it, and against the feeling of, like, how it feels. So yeah, I'm not sure where I'm quite going with that, but yeah, it's comparing those two feelings, as I said at the start, and yeah, resisting it. So you can compare, like, the guilt that you have when you've done it against, the resistance against that thing. So actually resisting it, you're sort of like, you're telling yourself not to do it. It's like you're fighting it. You say, no, don't do that. It makes me feel like guilty and this and that, and we're resisting negative feelings. We're resisting feeling that guilt and that shame and embarrassment and lack, and we're not doing the activity because of those feelings that are inside our body somewhere. The guilt, the shame, the embarrassment, the lack, the anger, it's all inside our body. So if we're resisting, like, doing the thing because of that, to avoid those feelings, then we're resisting just listening to the feelings. So we don't need to resist. We don't need to resist the action, the gambling, the chocolate cake, the cigarettes, the alcohol. All we need to do is just sit and listen to those, bring those feelings up, and surrender to them, surrender to the guilt, the lack, and pay attention to them. It's not the not doing the thing that will conquer those feelings, that will release those feelings. It's just accepting, surrendering, and accepting that those feelings are there inside your body. And so yeah, that's where the resistance, like the not resisting. And if you're resisting, as I know a lot of problem gamblers do, like they abstain from it to avoid the guilt and the shame and the lack and the worry and the anxiety, rather than listening to those feelings. And instead, as Epictetus discusses, it's like finding the pleasure of not doing the thing, finding the joy and the satisfaction of not doing that thing, rather than avoiding the negative feelings. Instead, embodying the feelings that you get when you've not done it. So it's bringing the energy up rather than avoiding it, what's inside your body. So I've actually coached myself there. I've actually helped. So this has been quite a good video and a good podcast because I understand it now. Now I've spoke through it. And yeah, with my journey, I'm 4 months without gambling. 27th September last year was my last bet, and after 18 years of compulsive gambling, compulsive guilt, shame, lack, I was down in those emotions, hate, anger, resent. I had all those combined, and now I've come up, and now I can see. Now my consciousness is going up. I felt it, and I can feel. I know it feels. I know how satisfying it feels not to do the thing now. And it's a journey for me. It's like a journey you need to go down. In the book, The Daily Stoic, he talks about how people who smoke, sometimes a good approach could be like to smoke yourself silly, and to give yourself that feeling of like the guilt, to give you, so you can embody the guilt, and then you can compare that, all the guilt of overdoing the thing to the resistance of it. And yeah, and like another example, I know people who have stopped gambling because of all the money that they've lost. I know people have lost hundreds of thousands of pounds in a short space of time. I know I've heard stories that people robbing hundreds of thousands of pounds from their works and stealing, and almost attempting suicide, what someone yesterday who attempted suicide, hundreds of thousands of pounds in debt, and then he realised that he realised that actually I'm not going to do it anymore. So that's an example in case where you just overdo it, and then you realise you're not enjoying it anymore. But the danger is when you're just taking little bites of things and not finding that guilt. You should be doing it, and you're just taking little bites and not feeling that guilt of doing it. And sometimes that can be the best, that can sort of bring you out of it. It doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be like, you get to that point, and we can sort of learn to sort of overcome it before we get to that point. As with me, I haven't attempted suicide. I just woke up one day on the 20th of September, said, I'm just bored of this. I'm going to change. But that's what I've heard from other people, that you just get to that point of like the lowest of the low. You hear about people like getting to the lowest of the low and then realizing there's no way further down. When you attempt suicide, there's like literally no way further down you can go. So the only way is up. So some people have to get to that point, to that journey, to then start to believe that that's it. It's the only way is up now. So it's everyone's on our own journey, and it's just loving people and just letting people. For me, it's like letting people go on their own journey whilst sharing my journey, and explaining this is what I've done, this is how I've overcome it, and moving with that. And then if someone sees my story, if one person, 2 people, 5 people see my story, and it sort of resonates with them, and then that's great. But it's not for me. Like preaching, like what I've done can work for you, because no one has any answers. We all only have our own answers, and all we can do is just share what works for us. And if we share what works for us, then more chance that at least someone could resonate with that and overcome a challenge, and it's been worth doing. And for me, it helps my recovery. Doing these videos, podcasts, helps my recovery. It reminds me, reading the Stoics, meditating, journaling, being aware of my thoughts, raising my consciousness, of like how it feels to overcome and conquer this addiction, the gambling addiction, and just keep comparing that to how it felt, like excitement of placing a bet, and this sort of feeling wins every day, and I realise that, but you can only realise this. It's like being aware that you can only sort of realise this when you've gone through it. And when I speak to other people who are not aware of these feelings of overcoming it, the satisfaction of overcoming something, they might not comprehend that. They might not be aware, they might not understand that. So it's being aware. For me, it's being aware of that, paying attention to that, and just loving the person on their journey, and asking questions, and ask questions that I was asking myself to come through it, and reflecting, and so that's today's Daily Stoic. Thank you, EPICTETUS. Thank you, the Daily Stoic. Thank you, life. Thank you for this day, 13th of February. Compare the feelings of the satisfaction of not eating that chocolate cake. If you can do it today, if whatever addiction you have, whether it be eating chocolate, social media, Netflix, maybe today you could sort of feel like, okay, this is how I feel. If prior to doing anything, I feel excited. I've eaten that chocolate cake, and when I'm eating it, I feel excited. I feel that rush, and then hold that feeling, and then maybe the next time, don't do it. Just don't do it, and then compare that feeling like of not doing it and how satisfying that feels to the feeling that you had before eating it, and making your choice. Next time, do you want to eat it and feel guilty, or do you want to not do it and feel the satisfaction, and be in control of your own choices, not be enslaved by all these programs, not be manipulated by the adverts, having the self-control to building that self-control to not do the thing, saying no. Self-control it's an innate thing. You just have to realise it's there. Your ego might be protecting you from that. Your childhood stories where you're in control. As a child, you're in control. You're being in control with your parents, people around you, teachers. They were in control of you. And what we do, we grow up and we we tend to hold on to this feeling of being controlled, but now we're in control of ourselves. We've left school, we've left our parents, well, I don't know, you might have left your parents when you're watching this. If you're a child watching this, then you're on a different journey. But for the adults watching this, they've left their parents, you have left your parents now, you're in control. You have an opportunity to realise your self-control and become aware of your thoughts. Not do the thing. I'll leave you one quote from Kyle Cease. You have a power to choose over your voice. The power to choose over your voice. The power of choice is louder than the power of a voice. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Ash, over and out. Bye.